Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about picking a language or a domain when you are switching jobs. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, I'm wondering whether or not I should stick at a specific company or I should move. And I'm wondering because I'm trying to figure out if it's better to prioritize my own personal development through learning a new language or learning a new tech stack, or if I should pick a company based on the mission of the company and the domain that I get to work in, which is better for my career. And the short answer is that it very, very much depends, and it's also a very personal question. Let me explain. So I think that in general terms we can all agree that picking a tech stack that is relevant to the job market in your region is usually the best bet. Now, in general terms, that just means that if you have the skills that are required in order to get a job in your region, then that's the best thing for you. And sure, that is absolutely the perspective of most people. Like, it makes sense. If you are a developer, your value is in almost all situations related to how well you know a certain tech stack. And if the company uses that tech stack, they're going to pay you to do it. But it's not the whole truth either, because there are situations where the tech stack that you know, and this is actually very common, is not as important as your experiences from the industry. You see, a tech stack, if you are a seasoned veteran programmer, it's almost pointless. It's almost irrelevant what stack you have been working with if you're really good at what you do. If you are a seasoned veteran programmer who has been working in, I don't know, C#, Java, Ruby, it doesn't really matter, and you're going to switch over to PHP or Python or Scala, or it doesn't really matter what it is, right? The leap for you to go from one thing to the other is not going to be very hard, because programming is in general very similar. It doesn't really matter which programming language you pick. There are some exceptions to this rule, but in general terms it's not much of a transition for you. So sure, a company might see that, all right, you are really, really good, but you don't know the exact tools that we use. Okay, that's okay, because most of the things that you're going to do here is something you're going to learn on the job. That's the way they're going to reason about it if you're good enough. And if they don't really have anybody else who can measure up, right? What's interesting about that is that in certain companies, it's actually even more interesting what you have been doing. A favorite role of mine to state about this specific topic is the DevOps culture. Now, DevOps is a very interesting thing, because if you have experience as a DevOps engineer, the stack that you've been using is absolutely relevant, but what's even more interesting is where have you been working? If you've been a DevOps engineer at a small-time firm with maybe just a few employees, that's not as interesting as if you have been working for Google or Facebook, or doesn't have to be at that scale, but at that same level, right? And if you didn't know that, that's sort of the same reason why everybody wants people that from Google and Facebook and so forth. Because the company that they have been working for has had a work culture or a mission statement or something like that has given you a very unique set of insights and experiences within a given area. Now, why this is when it comes specifically to Google and Facebook, why this is so interesting for the vast majority of IT is because they are the companies that they are the base layer. They are the companies that have the most to say about technical matters. And so if you have engineers from such a company, any company, because all companies, regardless of what business they're in, are always built on top of the tech stack, always. The tech stack is the foundation layer, and then on top of that they have their business. Whatever they're doing, if they're selling cars or insurances or tickets or whatever, that's always the base layer. So if you have developers who are really, really good at that, well, they're always going to be interesting. But then you have other areas of IT where the domain knowledge of that domain is also extremely interesting. such as, let's say, banking or insurance. Now these are or legal things like law and so forth. Now the reason why this is interesting from a hiring perspective is because this is highly specialized information. It's extremely hard to find developers and train them in how to work within a bank environment with, depending on where you are, of course, to work with all of the information and all, like say taxes, things like that. These are very complicated domains, and it helps a lot if you have developers who have experiences from these areas before. And it's the same thing with DevOps. Like, it's very hard to find an experienced DevOps engineer that is going to be worth your investment. But if you do find someone like that, that's invaluable to your company. It's more valuable than the tech skills that they have, because the tech skills you can fix, but the experience takes so long to get into one single person. So when it comes to you picking one or the other, it comes down to what we're talking about. If you are interested in the mission statement or the domain of a company who does, I don't know, say booking systems for funeral homes, or for retirement homes, or for if you do booking systems for small venues or things like that, that's not a domain that is going to be all that relevant to you in future employments, because it's such a niche market. There are it's not going to matter all that much. You're not going to get any return on investment in terms of monetary compensation and in terms of employment options if you work on something that isn't within a domain that is fairly complicated or fairly in demand. On the other hand, I would say that it comes down to you here. It really does. Because the thing is, if you really find a company that you really identify with, where you feel like, wow, I really want to be part of this, it's going to be an interesting thing. I mean, if for myself, I would say that Duolingo, you may know about the app for language learning. I think that's a pretty cool company, and I really identify with the mission statement of that company. It would be awesome. It would be really cool to work at such a company. But I would go there not because I know what they're using in terms of tech stack, and not because I believe that I would ever get any return on investment from being part of such a company. It's more about the mission itself. And that's a personal thing. And that's something you should always consider as well. If you're personally invested in a specific company or something like that, then I think that you should focus on that more than whether or not you're going to get a return on investment from going into that company. A lot of companies, or a lot of developers, look at Google or Facebook and so forth as, well, if I go and work there, then I'm going to be set. And sure, in many cases that's the case, but Google is also a place where they screen you pretty hard, and they do like it if you identify with their mission statement. So what I want you to take away from this is that it's impossible for me to say which is going to be the better bet. If you should prioritize going to a company where they're using a tech stack that's going to benefit you, or if you should go to a company that has a mission statement or works within a domain that's going to benefit you, because it always depends. In general terms, it's better for you to go to a company where they're using technology that is relevant to your work region. So if you're starting your first job, it might be better for you to work in a company that has a work environment that's going to help you develop as much as possible. But on the other hand, if you find a company that's doing something that you really care about, that's going to be a much more enjoyable experience usually for you. And in some cases, having the domain knowledge from a specific company is much more important, or it's going to give you much more value than what specific tech stack you use, and vice versa. It completely depends on the domain we're talking about and the tech stack we're talking about, and of course you yourself and which region you find yourself in. So these are just some guidelines I think that you should keep with you when you think about your investment, if you're going to go with a company that does something cool, or if you're going to go with a company that uses something cool. Have a great day.